So I start with a simple sketchy line for her part. Now I'm drawing loose clumps of hair to frame her face. I'm also indicating that egg-like roundness of the head. Now I'm flaring the hair out with a soft curve. Usually the hair will cling closer to the head at the ears and then flare away from the head as it comes down. For this hairstyle, I'm wrapping some pieces of hair around the head for the half up, half down look. I think this is a very pretty and feminine hairstyle, and I think it fits my character. You'll notice that with clumps of hair, they'll come from the same root area, flare out in shape, and then come back together. You can kind of think of them as thick ribbons. Now I'm just adding a couple more details to the shapes at the top, bending my lines as the hair would softly bend around the sphere of the head. Now I'm quickly toning the hair with my 3H pencil. Like with the ears and all the other features really, you can decide just how detailed you want to get. This can be as simple or as detailed as you wish, so you may choose to not even put a tone on. With a tissue, you can easily blend large areas of the piece, rather than using the stump. Now with my kneaded eraser, I just clean up any extra fuzz. And then I flip my drawing upside down. Sometimes for me, it's just more comfortable to do certain strokes in a certain direction. It just felt easier drawing these hairs upside down. You may find this as you work too, but draw whichever way works best for you, even if that means flipping your drawing upside down every once in a while. Use every weird trick in the book to get the drawing you want. Now I'm drawing in some darker lines, using more pressure on my pencil to get that darker value. You'll see I'm putting these darker values closer to where the hairs are coming together, near the roots. I also shade back here to push this area back behind her and into the shade. Now with my 4B, I go in and add some darker accents. This will make the character pop with contrast. In this one, I keep the areas around the face dark. It will help catch the viewer's eye and pull them into my focus, which is her face. For the next shadow, I'll typically draw a shape like this, to help give some separation between the head and the neck. I'll also sometimes put a thin cast shadow from the hair onto the face. I like to finish off drawing my hairstyles with a few light curved flyaway hairs. I think this adds some fun and freeness to the sketch and keeps it from looking too forced. At areas like the part, you may also want to do a couple more detail hairs as well. So start with simplified shapes, then add detail and tone when you become confident in the design. Then finish off the hairstyle by redefining and adding in some flyaway hairs. See, I always start with the same general process. I plan out the shapes lightly with my pencil, and then as I become more confident in my design, I add smaller details and darker lines. With hair, try keeping some lines light and thin, and others thick and dark. This will give your piece exciting variety. You'll see sometimes I blend with my fingers. Your fingers can make for great blending tools, but just make sure they're clean and dry. If they're not, you can smudge the lead and it can lead to ugly splotches. Just keep a towel next to you as you work if you need to wipe off your hands. Now with my 3H, I'm just adding a little cast shadow on her face. And you can see here, I just decided this is too much, and it's just not working. So I redraw the hair design with a 0.9 2B pencil. To finish this hairstyle, I just add some quick flyaway hairs with my light 3H. As you can see, drawing hair from your imagination can take a certain amount of trial and error. If you want a more straightforward process, however, using references will be the way to go.
Site before you go and pledge and become a patron. But now let's get into this full hair study. We're doing again a nice dark blonde hair study, and the hair is very wavy, which makes it a bit more challenging to do. But I'm going to approach it in the exact same way as I did with that small lock of hair. No matter how challenging the hair study is, I still go through the same process and the same step by step that I did with that small lock of hair. First, by going in with that lightest colour, and this is very much an off-white ivory tone, and I'm just using this to block in all of the highlights that I can see in my reference. And if you ever are drawing something realistically, you definitely will want to use a reference so that you can get all of the shadows and highlights in the right place and really give it depth and a 3D look. Then once again, I'm going in with that second colour. This is more of a creamy yellow tone, as you can see, gives a lot more vibrancy to the hair. And I go over a lot of those highlighted areas, but I also start to add this to areas that are more mid-toned. Then once again, we're going in now with the mid-tone colour, and you can see that when I'm drawing in the hair, I'm going in lines that are going with the direction the hair is going in. And that is so important if you want to give a realistic hair texture. You don't want to shade in circular motions or anything like that. You want to do lines that are going with the direction hair is going in. And if you're drawing wavy hair like this, then you need to look at each section individually because they'll probably be going in a different direction, especially if the hair is wavy or curly. Then I blend all of that together, and this really removes all of the graininess from the paper and really gives a soft, smooth, shiny look. And it's really easy to blend pastel with cotton buds, and they're a nice cheap way to blend out your pastels. And so you just want to try and remove all of the graininess and give a nice even base layer to build on top of. One thing that's brilliant about pastels is that you can layer and layer them, especially because pastel paper tends to be really textured and can cling on to a lot of the pastel. Now, one question that I quite often get is how do I sharpen pastels and charcoal without them breaking? And I just use this standard sharpener, but I make sure that I go very slowly and that I don't apply too much pressure to the pencil. And I check the pencil quite often just to make sure it's not broken, and I like to only sharpen it until I got it to a point that I need it to be at. I don't like to over sharpen my pencils because the more you sharpen it, the more at risk it is of breaking. So now that I've got in those lighter tones and those mid-tones, I'm going in with that lightest colour again, and I'm just going to make the highlights pop a bit more because when you blend everything together with that darker mid-tone colour, it makes the highlighted areas a little bit darker. So I want to brighten them back up so that we're using the full range of the value scale. Then I'm going back in with that mid-tone colour, and we really need to start to build up those darker values now because everything is looking very light. Another tip that I have for you guys when you're drawing hair, no matter what medium you're using, is not to try and drawing every single strand of hair. You want to build up the hair in clumps, and you want to give it that 3D volume look to it. And so you don't need to draw lots of individual lines for the hair, otherwise that will give it more of a wiry look to it and it won't look very realistic. Instead, try to build up the masses of hair by looking at the lights and the darks that you can see in the reference. I'm working from the top to the bottom of my drawing now, and I'm starting to go in with those darker pencils to build up all of the shadows. And in this particular reference photo, the roots of her hair were a bit darker than the ends, so I'm focusing a lot of this brown pencil right at the roots and at the top of the head, and I won't be using as much of it as I go throughout the rest of the hair. An important thing to note is that for the underneath layers of hair, because there are going to be curls and waves of hair that are overlapping underneath layers, those underneath bottom layers of hair are going to be a bit darker, and the bits of hair that are on the top, that are the top layer, is going to get a bit more light. The light won't be able to get to those underneath layers. So If there's any layers of hair that's casting shadows on the hair beneath it, it will be a bit darker, if that makes sense. I'm now finally going in with that black tone, and I'm only using this for those darkest areas. I try and avoid this color as much as I can, and you don't have to use black. You can go in with some darker browns if you are not a fan of using black in your drawings. That is completely fine. But to make sure it doesn't look too flat, I like to go over the top with a dark brown, over the top of that black, to merge those colors in together so that it comes out as a nice, dark, rich brown tone. At the moment, we're starting to get in the main forms of the hair, and we've got in those lights and those darks, but there's not really many details to the hair. There's not any loose individual hairs, and it looks a bit uniformed at the moment. And this can make it look a bit more cartoony. So we definitely need to go in with our next layer and build up more details. But as you can see, once again, between layers, I like to go in and blend everything out just to keep it nice and smooth. And I'm using a cotton bud to do that. So now we're getting into those details, and for this you'll want to make sure that you've got nice sharp pencils when you're doing the first and second layer that we've just done. It doesn't matter if your pencils are really sharp, but once we start to get in and do these individual details, you want to make sure that you have got sharp pencils so that your lines are nice and crisp. And this is what's really going to take the hair study up to that next level and make it look realistic, is by adding these loose individual hairs that are overlapping and sweeping across the hairstyle, sweeping from section to section of hair. And it really helps to make it look like the hair has got more motion, like it's blowing in the wind, and that it's not just slicked down on the head, it's got more body to it now. So you definitely want to go in and add these individual little hairs and these wispy bits of hair, especially around the outside of the hairstyle going onto the background. And you don't just want to do this with the lightest colour, but you can go in and do this with those darker tones as well, especially around the top of the hair. And one great thing about pastels is that you can keep tweaking it until you're happy with it, because you can layer light colours on top of darker colours and darker colours on top of the lighter shades as well. And here you can see the finished result. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial and learned a few tips on drawing hair with pastel pencils.